Harbin, China. Today, it is known as the Ice City, famous for its beautiful winter sculptures and festivals. Tourists flock here to see the lights. But 80 years ago, beneath this snow, lay a secret so dark that humanity is still trying to comprehend it. Just a few miles from the city center, behind high electric fences, stood a fortress that did not exist on any map. Locals were told it was a lumber mill. They were told the trains entering the complex were carrying logs of wood. They were wrong. The logs were not wood. They were people, men, women, and children, kidnapped off the streets to be consumed by the fires of Unit 731. While the Nazi atrocities in Europe are well documented, the horror in the East remained hidden for decades. Why? Because the United States government made a deal with the devil. Welcome to Redacted Past. To understand this nightmare, we must understand the man who built it. Surgeon General Shiro Ishii. Ishii was not your average soldier. He was a medical prodigy, charismatic, wealthy, and obsessed with one thing: biological warfare. In 1930s Japan, while other generals focused on guns and tanks, Ishii argued that the weapon of the future was bacteria. He famously told his superiors, "If the Geneva Convention bans germ warfare, that means it must be effective. We must have it." Impressed by his zeal, the Japanese Empire gave him an unlimited budget. He built a sprawling complex in occupied Manchuria. It was the size of a small city. It had its own airfield, railway, and even a Shinto temple. Inside, thousands of doctors and scientists lived in luxury. They had swimming pools and a cinema, but just a few meters away, in the concrete basements, hell was in session. The victims of Unit 731 had no names. To the doctors, they were simply Maruta, the Japanese word for logs. This dehumanization was crucial. You don't feel guilty about chopping up a piece of wood. What happened inside these walls makes the horror movies seem tame. Ishii wanted to know the limits of the human body in extreme warfare conditions. One of their primary interests was frostbite. In the freezing winters of Manchuria, soldiers were losing limbs. Ishii needed data. Prisoners were taken outside in -40-degree weather. Their arms were doused in water and left exposed until they froze solid. Witnesses testified that the limbs sounded like hollow wood when struck with a stick. Once frozen, the subjects were dragged back inside. The doctors would then try various methods to thaw the flesh, pouring boiling water, holding it to fire, while carefully recording the agony of the victim as the flesh rotted away. But cold was just the beginning. They had vacuum chambers, large steel cylinders designed to simulate high-altitude pressure. A prisoner would be locked inside. The air was slowly pumped out. As the pressure dropped, the victim's eyes would bulge. Their eardrums would burst. The doctors watched through thick glass, timing exactly how long it took for a human being to explode from the inside out. And then, there was the vivisection, the surgical dissection of a living subject without anesthesia. Ishii believed that anesthesia would alter the body's natural response to disease. So, when they infected prisoners with plague, cholera, or anthrax, they opened them up while they were still awake to see what the disease was doing to their organs in real time. These experiments weren't just sadism, they were for a purpose. Ishii was building a weapon to win the war. He developed a special bomb made of porcelain, ceramic. Unlike metal bombs which exploded with heat, killing the bacteria inside, porcelain would shatter gently, releasing its deadly payload. And the payload, millions of plague-infected fleas, bred in massive incubators inside Unit 731. They tested these weapons on real Chinese cities. Planes flew low over Ningbo and Changde, dropping mixtures of wheat, cotton, and fleas. Days later, the outbreaks began. Bubonic plague, people collapsing in the streets, entire families wiped out. Estimates suggest that Japanese biological warfare killed between 200,000 and 580,000 Chinese civilians. Ishii was proud. His weapon worked. He was preparing for his biggest target yet, the United States. In 1945, Unit 731 planned Operation Cherry Blossoms at night. Kamikaze pilots were to fly planes loaded with plague fleas across the Pacific and crash them into San Diego, California. The date was set for September the 22nd, 1945, but history intervened. The atomic bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki first. Japan surrendered. The war was over. As the Soviet army invaded Manchuria, Ishii ordered the facility destroyed. The remaining prisoners were gassed. The building was blown up. Ishii fled back to Japan, carrying thousands of pages of research data. Enter the United States. General Douglas MacArthur took control of occupied Japan. American intelligence quickly learned about the biological experiments. The Soviets wanted Ishii dead. They demanded he be put on trial for war crimes, but the Americans had a different idea. The Cold War was starting. The US wanted the biological data before the Russians got it, and Ishii knew this. He had the ultimate bargaining chip. A secret deal was struck. In exchange for handing over all the slides, the notebooks, and the data on the human experiments, Shiro Ishii and his team were granted full immunity. While other Japanese leaders were hanged for their crimes, the monsters of Unit 731 walked free. The US government categorized the information as top secret and buried it. Ishii lived comfortably until he died of throat cancer in 1959. Many of his subordinates went on to become prominent figures in Japan, heads of pharmaceutical companies, deans of medical schools, and leaders in the Japanese Olympic Committee. And the data, it went straight to Fort Detrick, Maryland. It became the foundation of the US biological weapons program. It wasn't until the 1990s that the United States finally acknowledged the deal. But for the thousands of victims, the men, women, and children who were frozen, dissected, and gassed, justice never came. We often think of history as a battle between good and evil, but sometimes, it's just a negotiation between power and interest. The question remains, is knowledge worth the price of a soul? If you think this story sounds familiar, it's because the US did the exact same thing with the Nazis. Click here to watch the story of Operation Paperclip. I'm Miles. This is Redacted Past.